Well, good day everybody. This is where the fun begins. We're going to start setting up the differential. I bought this tool actually quite a while ago for the 8.8 rebuild, but I'm going to be using it right now. An assortment of measuring tools right there. Getting things set up. One thing with the Pinion, doing some measuring. This Pinion's actually going to sit deeper than what that one there is. So I'm almost thinking that in the end, I'll probably won't have to run with any shims at all. But I'm just getting everything all set up as far as tooling and everything else. Because this is going to be quite the interesting little job to set this one up. So this tool right here, if I can get it out of the package, will greatly help improve trying to set up the pinion, hopefully. If I can get a couple holes where it's going to fit. The problem with those 3/8 bolts is that they're too short to get a nut on the other side, but I might be able to make these ones work. Well, this is not the ideal setup, but I can get a couple of those threaded in. So according to the instructions, the original pinion depth should have been 0.042. That's about 0.046. So I'm going to try to find one that's close. No, definitely not that one. Definitely not that one. And then start off with that. Where are we at right here? 20. Got all these 20s. I don't have a thick one. No thick one. So I measured up all my shims. 0.010, 0.015, 0.020. But this is where it's get interesting because I got the thick shim on the original differential. And take a measurement to there to there. It's the same distance or same height without using a shim. So I think I'm going to start to set up without a shim because the profiles are exactly the same, except this one here, you can see the shoulder's pretty thin and then the shoulder's pretty thick on there. So I'm going to start off, put the setup bearing on as such, and I'm going to put some oil on it. So I got some 75/90 here because you're supposed to lubricate it with oil and don't use grease for the setup because you might actually affect your readings if you use grease instead. And I get it, I totally get it. And then this is the bearing for the front that I'm also going to oil. I'm going to put on a towel or something. All right. Well, this plug up top for the airline is no longer good. I had to get a socket on there to pull this out, thread tape. I am going to keep this as a spare because I think the copper tube just got pulled out of it. In reality wise, it's still good. So oiled there. This one's oiled. We always start off with no crush sleeve. We set it up without the crush sleeve, and I got the crush sleeve Eliminator that we're going to put in. Take the pinion, feed it through. It's not going to sit in there perfectly at the moment. So I got the bearing kind of snug where I want it to be. So I'm gonna give it a couple taps from this side, and then go to the other side, give it a couple taps. Come to this back side here, give it a couple taps. Spin it around. All right, this is where it's gonna be difficult because with used bearings, I gotta be around 15 inch-pounds. Now we gotta calculate braking torque and rolling torque, so needle kind of bounces, but turning wise, I think I'm bouncing between 12 and 15 inch-pounds, so I think I'm good right there. Same thing, need to put some gear oil on the bearings. Flip this thing upside down, because I gotta do the same with this one. So this is my new ARB setup. I gotta be careful with, so I don't ruin that tube. So just kind of eyeing up and getting ready to start put this in, and I'm already seeing quite a bit of issues. One of them is like this will need to be notched because it's too close to the tube. Probably the clamp itself will need to be notched, but I want to see if I can maybe get it up there first. Have a look. I need to be careful. Backlash will need to be measured still, but it's not looking horrible. I can see right there. I'm gonna figure out me and shim both of these shims in on that side. Okay. So just about to put that cap on, and hope you guys can see that it is touching. So I am definitely gonna have to take that out and grind it out. So I got enough of it away right there, so it's not gonna touch at all, which is a good sign. Real good sign. Now I know my backlash is way out to lunch. Could be for numerous reasons. Could be because I didn't use a shim on my pinion, which with the way the gears are set up before, it push it back and take up some of that too. But ultimately what I want to do is I want to see where the pinion is sitting before I can make adjustments. I don't know if you can see, but I am way out to lunch. I'm not even touching on the pattern. I got the pinion right there. Stack of shims. That's pretty close to where the other one was. We're gonna try this again. Backlash is still out, but we took up a lot of it. So I'm gonna see whether if the gear pattern is gonna mesh a little better. So you can see one side, and then you can look at the gear pattern on the other side, and my backlash is pretty close, but I'm gonna see if I can fine tune it a little bit yet. So I'm running up the gears. Looking pretty good. Let's see if I get this backlash. Now, backlash is at the tight end, which is okay. I'm pretty satisfied with that. Okay, so going over all these shims, there's not a lot of options, especially with the pinion shims that I got. This is like, there's nothing that's even close to this one. That's why I had to shim up a bunch. And you don't really, you have a few more options with this one as far as thinner ones go. But looking at the sheet here, so driver's side heel, coast side heel, kind of want them to be somewhere close to the middle. If it's too far away, it's going to be straight up top and then round down towards the bottom, as you can see. And if you're too close, your drive is going to be there and then up. And then ultimately you want to be somewhere like right about there. I think my opinion is be a little on the close side, but with the shims I got, any move I make is gonna make too much of a difference and move it too far away. So now I'm just getting some of the shims fitted up and then stick it back in, see what's gonna happen. So those big orange blocks that you see on the ground is a case spreader. I picked that up off Amazon because I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. As I talked about it, you're pretty limited with the shims you got, but I don't have the preload, because if the preload was set right, that wouldn't move. And this leads me to concern, because when the original ARB locker was installed, I'm actually reusing the same thickness of shims and everything else. That will not change as far as preload goes. I mean, the different gears will change a little bit, as you guys seen. I had to move the pinion depth in a little bit deeper. I'm not a big fan of having to notch that bearing cap out for the copper tube, because if something ever happens with that bearing cap, then this whole differential is garbage, because these caps are machined. With the way it is, the copper tube would have been resting on that bearing cap, which caused vibrations and probably ultimately led it to break, along with not having the preload set up properly. Because if you guys have been following this series, when I took the cover off, the shim was about halfway sticking out, which is not good. Now what I want to do is remove everything. Gonna pull that pinion off again. I'm gonna press the bearings, refit it up with the shim preloads, and then reinstall everything with the new shims, and then hopefully get this wrapped up. So yes, doing the install on the ground is definitely a lot harder, due to the fact that we are trying to struggle crawling underneath the Jeep. If you had a hoist, obviously it'd be a lot easier, or if the axle was out of the vehicle, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. The install would go like twice as fast. That's why I'm glad that there'll be a more in-depth how-to videos on my other channel, BSK Garage, when I do this one, because everything will be out. And it's pretty hard trying to get a camera underneath there to film angles when you don't have a lot of room, and lighting underneath is kind of poor, so you're picking up when I'm laying down. So now I'm going to get ready to press the new bearing on. Like I said, I'm happy with my shims. I got the old bearing here. I'm going to cut the rollers out and use the middle piece to help press it down. So as you can see, by cutting my setup bearing, that's going to allow me to push on the inner race and not damage the bearings on the outer cage. So it actually presses down really easy. And I think I bottomed out on my jack. So I'm just going to raise her up. Put another spacer, because I know I still got a ways to go. When I feel it get tight, I know we're good. So now, that's taken care of. Before I reinstall this, I'm going to, every kit comes with a crush sleeve. So that's your new crush sleeve right there. That's a used crush sleeve right there. Now crush sleeve would go on there, and then you tighten down your pinion, and this crushes in order to get the proper bearing preload. Now, of course, I'm not going to go that route because I bought a crush sleeve eliminator. So if I ever have issues with pinion seals or anything else down the road, this is already preset for the bearing preload. So it's just a matter of moving the flange, changing the seal, whatever, put it back in, and you're done. So what I am going to do, so I'm going to take a measurement off the old crush sleeve, and that is going to get me a rough measurement of where I need to be. So now I calculated this, and the shim pack is just 0.005 thicker than the other one. So that's how I'm gonna roll for starting. So I just assembled it. You can feel the play. So the preload is not even close. So I gotta pull it apart. Calculate how much shims I want to remove. Put it back in. Try it again. So there's probably a science to it. But right now, if I take out, that's about a 15th shim, put that back in, we'll see what the preload is. So now, the preload is, I should say the preload's not right, but the slack is taken out. So it still spins too freely to even check, so I have to take it apart again, remove another. Try this again, because I didn't have my dial zeroed out. So we're at about 30 inch-pounds of rolling, which is right for the preload. I'm happy with that. So I'm jumping along. I got to get this done. Like I said, I don't got time to be, as much as I would like to, fully document every step, but this has been quite challenging to try to get set up. But I got the carrier, except for the bottom piece, in place. I got to set that up. All right, so now I got the case spreader installed, and now according to instructions, you don't want to spread the case any more than 0.02, which would be right down there on the dial. So I'm gonna spread her open. I'm gonna put the carrier back in with its supposedly preloaded shims, and then I'm gonna back it off. Everything is back in. We're looking how the gear pattern is emerging. I don't know if you can really see that well, but shadows. I'm pretty happy. I am pretty happy with the way things have turned out. So one thing too, I got the preload set up right when this copper tube can't move. That means everything is good. Well, that makes me happy. Now I can go about and do the final assembly now, and hopefully everything works out the way it should. So I'm gonna get ready to put the seal back in. This has grease on the inside for lubrication. I put grease on the inside too for the spring. New washer, new nut, red Loctite, black RTV. That is for the splines on the drive shaft flange so oil can't leak itself out. So I got some silicone. Like I said, you need to do this to prevent oil from escaping out from the nut. Now for the seal, red Loctite on the threads. This is a brand new nut, and it is a stover, so it will have locking properties on its own. So need to get that started. And down. Now, before I get ready for the final assembly, I'm happy with everything. It's time to put the seals in this. Otherwise, nothing's gonna work. And these are the seals right here in the bag. Now, what's very important here with these seals is more so when you go to put it back on, because if you are a little bit rammy, you're going to damage the seal, and then you're not going to be any good to anybody. I do have a spare set, so I'm hoping that won't happen, so I'm going to throw another one in. And then I'm going to oil her up, and then we'll be good to be on our way. So, I'm going to take some oil that I have in this lid, gear oil, and I am going to coat the seals. The fun part begins. We're going to stick this on, but we are going to kind of try to work this back and forth. It's nice to use a light, see if you're hanging up anywhere. I think we got her. I know you guys kind of like to watch some B-roll, but There's not really a whole bunch to see here. Alright, remember to put some Loctite on your studs. Those are going to be torqued down to 80 foot-pounds. See upside down? That's my backlash. That's happy with that. Getting closer, just fitting up that copper tube. I'm gonna need to test this now and see if there's any leaks. Hopefully there is. The moment of truth. Oh yeah, it's holding. It's holding. Oh yeah, blew exhaust out. Powered up again. Oh, yeah. We're good. Fuck, I'm happy. Well, glad that part is done. I'm going to clean up some of my mess of some of the things I don't need anymore, and then it's time to shut her down and finish this off next video. That feels good. I got some of my bench cleaned up. Here's the broken pinion. If you ever have an ARB Airlocker, an RD117 or 117, whatever the heck it is, these are your bearing races, parts number. That is your replacement bearing number. Well, it's a messed up here because the ARB uses different bearings than what your rebuild kit will have. Unfortunately, it is what it is. It's lucky I caught that. Everything is installed. Few things I want to talk about. It's time to crack open a beer. All right, we've got new beer. This is Great Lakes Brewery Tank 10 Skinny Pants Session Stout. 4.3%. That's a total hipster beer right there. Shut her down. Shut her down. All right. I'm glad that part is done. That was actually pretty stressful. This does look like it's brown. Like liquid shit. It's not bad though. It's pretty good. Anyways, what I was saying is that it took a while to get the pinion set up properly. As far as with the crush sleeve eliminator, which is a lifesaver because you just tighten her up. And when it's tight, you can't go any further, which is nice. And it puts the proper preload on the bearings. Oh, excuse me. I must have got some COVID. But over time, of course, your bearings are going to loosen up. So the idea is try to get it more on the tight side, but not over the actual tight side. And with the Jeep is set up with the gas tanks there, and this is a job that is most easily better done if the axle's outside the Jeep. It goes a lot quicker, or if you had access to a hoist. But crawling over underneath one side of the Jeep, then crawling over the other side of the Jeep, grab the pinion, take it out, adjust some shims, put it underneath, tighten it back up, check the rolling resistance, use the case spreader. We're going to talk about the case spreader. So, as far as what I've seen now that it's installed, there's two things that weren't done properly that a so-called professional shop did not do. And the one thing I'm not really happy that I had to do it because it could turn out ugly, but I had to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole again. The first thing is, it doesn't matter where your pinion is sitting. As far as what I'm going to say is that the amount of shims that the OEM setup had was way under preload. I actually set that carrier back up with the same amount of shims, the same thickness. Actually reused the old shims, and the preload was way out to lunch, not even friggin' close. I actually had to add another 10 thou and then another 10 thou using the case spreader for preload to get it so that little air actuator piece with the copper tube could not float inside there, because that's how much play there was. And that's probably the reason why when I took the differential cover off, when that one shim was halfway out, because the preload was not set properly. Case spreaders are sketchy as frig. I'm not a big fan of using them, only for the main reason is if you go and spread too far, that's it. Your differential's toast. You can crack it, you can bend it out of shape. I'm not a fan of it. Not a fan of it. If I'm adding 10 thou of preload, I may stretch it 11 thou max or even 9 thou and then work it in like that. I don't like to stretch it any more than I have to, just because there's so many variables at play that might come back to haunt you. The second thing I didn't like is that the end shims, besides for adding another, I think 10 thou on that side, the thick shim stayed exactly the same. But where that copper tube came out, the carrier cap or the bearing cap had to be shaved down. Now, I could have left it and the tube could have rested on that, which over time probably would have vibrated and broke off and then going down this rabbit hole again. Now, I did grind it out a little bit so that copper tube is not touching. Now, the problem with that is that now I essentially weakened that bearing cap. That being said, you cannot replace those caps. Those are machined to that axle housing. So if something happens, that bearing cap down the road breaks or whatever, that rear end is pretty much junked in. I have to scrap it. Because by time, well, you probably couldn't anyways, but if you had a new set cast or if you got a spare set and got it re-bored out, well, spend a lot of money. And you're probably not going to find somebody to bore it out either to make it perfect again. And then you're going to be going oversized and then trying to find bearings to fit that. Just a shit show. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not. The ARB locker set up now. It's working. It's not leaking air. I'm happy. But I would probably, if I was ever to do an air locker again, I would not go ARB, just because of the way the whole setup is with that copper tube and going through the housing. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm sorry, ARB. I'm sure it works great and a lot of people are happy with it, but I don't like that setup. I'm a huge fan of the way the aux locker setup is. If you want to use air, electric, or cable, you don't have to change over a bunch of parts. I can't take the locker I got right here and convert it over to electric if I wanted to. I'd have to buy a whole new carrier. Anyways, I'm just rambling on. It's motherfucking beer time. Shut her down. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I didn't get as much, I actually didn't get very much B-roll at all because spending more time focusing on getting the job done. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later.